Between Europe and Asia, economic dialogue, humanitarian missions, multi-vector operating and the search for compromises in the world arena. How else does Kazakhstan participate in the development of the modern world? More details, watch the program Kazakhstan International Vectors.
Today you will find out what does the UN Women Organization do, in which countries of the world the protection of the rights of the fair sex is provided at a highest level, and how is gender equality being ensured in Kazakhstan.
In 1916, Janet Rankin became the first American woman elected to the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress. Nancy Pelosi, having started her career as a lawmaker at the age of 47, at the beginning of the 21st century, became the first woman Speaker of the House of Representatives. She was on the top of the American political power structure, becoming the second person in the hierarchy of successors to the U.S. president. This country was among the first in the world to demonstrate the desire to create opportunities for the full disclosure of women's potential as a source of social progress. Today, women are represented in all spheres of life, starting from politics and ending with entrepreneurship. There are even no longer traditionally non-feminine professions left in the world. Representatives of the fair sex operate aircraft, build missiles, judge football, and even head the entire states. International organizations actively promote the topic of gender equality and advocate for the empowerment of women in all countries of the world.
Seminars, webinars, business trainings, and much more. Svetlana Bogatyreva knows practically everything about the female entrepreneurship. Holding a degree in psychology and an HR specialist in the past, today she oversees projects to develop the leadership potential of women in Kazakhstan. One of such projects is called Business Mom.
The idea of our project is precisely concentrated on the possibility of realization of women in both spheres of life, a family and professional business. Thus, a woman at the same time can be harmonious, not losing contact with her close people. It's possible, and our women have already proved it. Now we just need to work on it further, to put it as one of our vital tasks, our goals, and reach it.
The Women Leadership Foundation was opened in Kazakhstan in 2009. Svetlana is sure that she is right at her place because she manages to apply her knowledge in psychology and sociology in practice.
Now I have a feeling that I'm working not just for the sake of work, but for the sake of a social result, and also for my inner feeling that I am in my place, that I'm doing a job that helps other women. Of course, we are far from being ideal, that every woman will open a business that will become a successful entrepreneur and will further develop. But we clearly see when a woman has a professional realization. This woman is somewhat different from the one that is realized only in the home environment.
The main goal of the foundation is the realization of the rights and opportunities of the fair sex. This happens by providing all the necessary assistance to women entrepreneurs. To the question, is there a demand for such services, Svetlana has only one answer. Of course there is. So, for example, conferences in different cities of Kazakhstan collect 100 women at a time.
Women have one such problem. It is difficult for them to build an understanding strategy and generally to decide to open a business. Because there are stereotypes that business and entrepreneurship is difficult, that it requires huge investments which not everyone actually can afford. And here comes our mission, to be sort of ahead of all that. It's about how to decide on this, how to calculate all your possibilities, and only then, when you become an entrepreneur, you will need a sphere of communication, which again we can provide. Plus, if it is consultations on professional or very narrowly specialized issues, such as legal, accounting, you can always find it further in the public sphere.
Of course, there are partners. For example, one of the second-tier banks of Kazakhstan supports the organization's activities financially. This allowed conducting trainings in several cities in Kazakhstan and helping even more women. The Women Leadership Foundation also gets a support of the Damu Entrepreneurship Development Fund. Svetlana says that such cooperation opens up new horizons.
That is, we see success in synergy when many organizations work for one task and everyone has their own vision. That is, we as NGOs work directly with citizens. The organizations of the business sector have resources that help us. They have intellectual potential. Public sector, like the Demu Fund, for example, also have very great opportunities. And when it all comes together, it's a pretty good product.
At the Millennium Summit, which was held in 2000 in September, the leaders of the majority of countries in the world signed the UN Millennium Declaration. The support of gender equality has been determined as one of the 8 goals of this document. Kazakhstan also assigned to it. A year later, the Republic presented its first report on implementation of the Convention to the United Nations, which actually has gained a positive assessment. Since then, the work of Kazakhstan in this direction is being highly appreciated by the world community.
Overall, Kazakhstan has achieved quite a lot in gender equality. The global rankings also show that Kazakhstan is quite ahead, certainly in Central Asia. However, there's still a lot that needs to be done in Kazakhstan. When we speak about, for example, economic empowerment, women are well represented in small and medium enterprises, in the rural sector, in the agricultural sector, for example. But women are not sufficiently represented in decision-making positions. Yeah, this can be in the boards of companies, in decision-making, and in the corporate sector. You have too few women that are CEOs, yeah, chief executive officers. So much more needs to be done to have women playing a stronger and more active role in the economy.
Distinguishing quality of gender policy of Kazakhstan is the fact that the government is the main initiator of gender equality projects. It takes preventive measures in the field of gender equality. At present, the country has joined 60 different international agreements and conventions on human rights, including those directed towards the assurance of equality between sexes. The ratified conventions include the UN Conventions on the Political Rights of Women, on the Nationality of Married Women, and 6 conventions of the International Labour Organization, including the equal remuneration for men and women for work of equal value. Various international organizations also work closely with national partners.
For example, we work with the National Commission on Women, Family and Demographic Policy. We work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Ministry of National Economy, with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, the General Prosecutor's Office. In addition to government structures that we work with, we also work with universities and academia as partners. We also work with non-governmental organizations or civil society, the media, of course.
A national plan of action for the improvement of the status of women in the Republic of Kazakhstan was drafted and approved by a government decree. According to Article 33 of the Constitution, citizens have equal rights and opportunities to participate in the management of state affairs.
The number of women in the lower house of the Kazakh parliament today is 27%, which is more than the world average. In local representative bodies of all levels, women make up 22%. The share of women in the civil service is 56%. On average, over 15% of positions are held by women. In the small and medium-sized businesses, the proportion of women is 50%, while 44% of all SMEs are headed by the fair sex.
The high level of women's involvement in economic activities in Kazakhstan has become possible due to the country's social protection measures. For example, there is a maternity leave which allows taking care of a child up to 3 years, while the woman retains her job. Before the child reaches the age of 1 year, a woman is paid a social allowance in the amount of 40% of her earnings. One-time benefits for the birth of a child are also paid. Last year, the Gender Equality Strategy for Kazakhstan was implemented. The new concept of gender and family policy in the Republic until 2030 was approved. This document was developed in close cooperation with the UN Women Office in Kazakhstan and integrated all the key recommendations contained in the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
We also work to ensure that now we have a big program on what we call gender responsive national planning and budgeting. So this means when the government is making its national plans and strategies and when it's making its budgets, that these are viewed from a gender sensitive lens. So that means when a budget is prepared, that it's factored in the needs, the separate needs and the different needs of women and men, boys and girls, instead of just making, a blanket budget, putting in figures across lines. So this is something new for Kazakhstan, which we're bringing best practice, for example, from Europe, from other countries, to show and help Kazakhstan to do this gender responsive and gender sensitive budgeting and planning in the government. So once this is a long-term process. It will take several years to do, but once it is done, this will bring Kazakhstan much, much further ahead in achieving gender equality.
The issue of domestic violence remains actual for Kazakhstan as for a number of other countries. A new concept of gender policy adopted in the Republic provides for a number of systemic measures to prevent violence against women. A lot of work is being done with law enforcement agencies and the General Prosecutor's Office to develop systemic preventive measures. The Crisis Centers Union is active in the Republic.
We must understand that the violence that exists today in the society to which women are subjected really has a very strong influence not only on human health, but also on the opportunity to exercise and realize their creative potential. Because a woman starts to get sick, a woman feels uncomfortable. She is more focused on her problems if they are not solved in time. The Crisis Centers Union in Kazakhstan unites 16 different organizations from 11 regions of the Republic. On average, within 1 year, there are about 20,000 applications from women, men and children, the victims of domestic violence, who receive general advice. About 7,500 victims live in specially organized shelters.
It is necessary to develop minimum standards for the work of the Crisis Center to provide quality services for the rehabilitation of victims of domestic violence, human rights activists say. In addition, it is important to actively engage in reducing aggression from the perpetrators themselves. Such work should involve both law enforcement agencies and healthcare workers.
The Union of Crisis Centers started developing a whole package of documents aimed at organizing the work of the Crisis Center to provide a number of services, including legal, social, psychological assistance and reception or provision of temporary shelter. It is very important that we consider everything in a complex, that there is no substitution of concepts for the implementation of socially significant projects.
It is necessary to work with the violators themselves, the aggressors, to really achieve tangible results in matters of protection from domestic violence.
All over the world, if we take countries' ratings where, for example, Kazakhstan is striving to enter, like the top 30 competitive states, everywhere there are courses aimed at reducing aggression. But working with the aggressors requires a certain qualification. This is not just a state socially significant project, but it is about working with the person to change his attitudes and behavior that would help him change the attitude of family members and create favorable conditions for the development of all family members, including children.
In the world, international organizations are engaged in the issues of gender equality and the struggle for economic, social and political rights of men and women. The OSCE is guided by the provisions of the UN Security Council resolution. However, the UN Women's structure, which unites 195 states, remains the main international advocate for the rights of women and girls throughout the world.
UN Women is the UN entity that was created not long ago as a separate UN agency to promote women's empowerment and gender equality around the globe. This is the only agency that's been created by the United Nations in the 21st century, and it was done specifically in order that there is a focus on gender equality going forward in the future, because it was recognized that there needs to be more efforts done to ensure gender equality around the world.
UN Women around the world, among other things, promotes gender-sensitive policies, sustainable development of states, advocates a new approach to planning public budgets, and even assists refugees.
Well, all of our programs and all of our interventions are related to the protection and promotion of women. Of course, we deal with gender equality. We also feel that men and boys should be protected and promoted as well. So depending on the intervention and the work that we're doing, we may also focus on the needs of men and boys. But primarily, as women have not reached the opportunities and access that generally men and boys have, most of our focus goes to women and girls in this regard. So what we try to do, on the one hand, we work to ensure that legislation has no discriminatory measures. So, for example, the labor legislation here had provisions forbidding or prohibiting women from being employed in certain professions.
In 2016, the famous American actress Anne Hathaway was appointed to be a Goodwill Ambassador of UN Women. In this new capacity, the Hollywood star will promote gender equality in the workplaces and equity in the distribution of household responsibilities. For example, the actress will promote the possibility of entering into maternity leave for both parents.
World researchers have compiled a list of countries in which women's rights and freedoms are best provided. So, in the United Arab Emirates, women are securely protected by the legislative base. It is inadmissible to discuss, oppress or insult a woman. Even for a photo taken without her permission, you can go to jail. In Iceland, the president is a woman. In the parliament of this country, the beautiful sex accounts for 43%, and in the total workforce, 81%. This suggests that Iceland ladies have the right to freely engage in any professional activity.
Saudi Arabia is the only country in the world where women are not allowed to drive a car. Interestingly, there is no special law prohibiting ladies from driving. They just do not get the license. However, most people with higher education in Saudi Arabia are women, and in some other Muslim countries, the fair sex cannot leave the city, the country, or even the house without the permission of a male guardian. Svetlana talks about her future plans with enthusiasm. The foundation intends to continue its activities, but with a larger territorial coverage. Ideally, they want to form a whole community of women entrepreneurs who will communicate, exchange experience and practices, and help each other in the formation of their own businesses.
We conducted studies of women's entrepreneurship where it was revealed that it nevertheless differs from the men's one by greater communication, a greater focus on interaction, and women do not abandon business and develop it successfully when they have the opportunity to study, receive information, and communicate with their colleagues and get the experience of women's implementation in entrepreneurship.
The main objectives of the implementation of gender policy in Kazakhstan include achieving a balanced participation of women and men in power structures, ensuring equal opportunities for economic independence, the development of their business and promotion, creation of conditions for equal exercise of rights and duties in the family, freedom from violence based on sex. However, every citizen can and should be involved in ensuring gender security, experts say.
So this general balanced approach to really opening the space and providing women and girls with all opportunities is something that really is the business of every single person. And now that we have the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be implemented by 2030, the year 2030, this is also the business then of every single person in Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan will not achieve these 17 goals unless everyone contributes to this.
Probably in this case it is very difficult to conduct some measures of the preventive plan because the state structures should be engaged in prevention. But the business of every person who is subjected to constant violence is probably to work out a certain personal security plan.
Kazakhstan pays much attention to the protection of women's rights and their implementation on a par with men. For many years, the Council of Business Women has been operating under the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs, the main task of which is to stimulate economic activity of the beautiful half of the population of Kazakhstan. For 20 years, the Association of Business Women has been operating in the country. There are many NGOs that also support the empowerment of Kazakh women. The country's activities at such major international venues as the UN Security Council oblige Kazakhstan to further enhance the potential of women in economic, political and social fields.